Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 16th of June 2021, coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G7URP. Good to see you. On tonight's show, where are we on the waves towards Cycle 25 with Carl K9LA? We reveal details of this very special video camera offer for NARC members and viewers and friends. And we find out who works from a shack like this. If you have any ideas online and you want to enter them, you can do. Just drop it on either Facebook or on BATC who you think that hand shack is. It is Chroma Lighthouse, but I'm not sure that will help you much. But anyway, we've had some proper guesses by email. But first, good to see you. A couple of Sundays ago, Gordon G0HQJ phoned me and said that someone had offered him some really cheap video cameras. Now they were intended for sort of bird boxes and that sort of thing, but they could be, you could use them for security or for rear cameras. Anyway, we're going to show you them because they were very cheap. They still will be very cheap, but we're also hoping to raise some money for the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club charity this year, which is the East Anglian Children's Hospice. Anyway, let's firstly show you the camera. This is what they come in, a nice little box. I don't know if we can use this close-up camera, Tammy, maybe. Okay, so this is the box they come in. It's a composite camera. What that basically means is that it will plug into most televisions that have got a SCART socket, or one of the older televisions. If you've got an old TV that hasn't got it, this is the camera itself. So I'll show you. Now this is metal as well. I have to tell you that if you're into engineering, I think most amateurs are, this is made of metal. It's really, you know, it's really solid and quite heavy for the size of it. You get a little cable to plug in the back, which has got audio, video and power in. And you get instructions. There we are, it's like an unboxing video, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just thought of that. And some fittings, some screws to put them into, even a little raw plug and everything there. Anyway, that's what it looks like. Let's see what the quality of it is. So Tammy's got one here. If we go on wide shot, Tammy, and everybody can see what...
Wide shot?
Okay, no, by all means, show the picture from the camera. So bearing in mind, it's not HD.
Grommet.
The cameras we use in the studio are HD and really high quality. But when I tell you the price of these, I don't sound like one of those guys on the shopping channel, do you think?
Yeah.
You will be amazed. So there we are. That's of our little studio here.
Don't know if you can see our script now, so you can see what's coming.
I realise that we know what's happening.
I'm not sure where the focal point is of it.
No, we probably can adjust it actually, Tammy,
I did
and the
try
front.
and screw the little piece, but it
So
didn't really
this is
do
a
much.
standard definition, so it will work
Anyway,
with the older TVs as well as the new ones. But it's really quite good.
I've got a contraption and lots of
a
things.
little adapter. We've made, by the way, you can also get a little low-cost adapter, well under a tenner, to plug it into HDMI if you want to plug it straight into HDMI. Anyway, advert over.
Here we go. We can do a
Oh, you don't want to look at my nose,
do a
surely.
side shot here, so you can do your advert on the camera.
I'll do my advert. How much would you pay for a camera like this?
People can see we've not got a real background now.
That's true. Forget £20. Forget £10. These cameras can be yours for just £5 each, or if you want to buy three, it's £10 for three. That's £3.33 each. I'll look up here now.
Yeah, that's better.
So that is a serious offer, and that we are making a little bit of money on that, and that will all go to the East Anglian Children's Hospice.
I'm just going to, here we go. I've got some better pictures of it here. So
okay, so that's what it looks like. I didn't think of measuring it, and I should have done. I guess it's about a square inch. It's very small. Don't make you think that that's huge. It's certainly not in proportion with the cardboard box, obviously, because you wouldn't be able to fit it in there.
Obviously.
Okay, so there's audio, video. It runs on 12 volts. It's a composite output, and it has got a little mic in there as well. Designed for bird boxes and that sort of thing. It's called a camouflage camera, and we just want £5. Someone's already said on there, okay, we'll have three, David. Oh, that's really good. Anyway, so how will you be able to buy these? We've got quite a few, by the way. In fact, I don't mind telling you, I bought 80. I paid cash, so it's on my head be it, but they were cheap. And I do hope that you'll...
Do you just buy things because they're cheap?
Never.
Never. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, how do you get one of these if you want one? So you can email me and say I'd like to pick one up from my premises here, works premises near Attleborough, and that's fine too.
Got another 3.
Okay. You will be able to buy them very conveniently at the Barford Social on the 4th of July in a couple of weeks. That might be a very good place to pick them up. Or if you really can't make it here, and I must stress it's UK only, for the postage rate, we've worked out that we can post up to 6 for £3 in the normal second class parcel post. Okay, so they're the ways you can do it. Just drop an email to me if you'd like some. I don't think we're going to sell out quickly or anything like that, but they really are good things to have around. 3 for £10, you know. How useful could they be?
We just sold loads. I'm just writing everybody down who's
okay. 3 for me, please. Oh yes, people are putting the offers in. This is good. We should charge more. We should have charged more.
We should.
But I do really. I must sell all 80. Otherwise.
Okay. Everybody that has put on a comment you want them, don't worry. I'll put your names down.
But actually, in all seriousness, it would help me a bit if you could just email me with it and actually email it and say how many you want, £5 each or 3 for £10, and also please say when you would like to pick them up. That's really important. If you want us to post them, we'll contact you. If you want to pick them up from here at Attleborough, that's fine. You just put however you want to pick them up, just please put them on an email to me to tell me where you want to pick them up. Or you can pick them up at the Barford Social. Let's move on and talk about that actually. So we'll show you the slide we showed you last week. Hopefully most of you by now know that we're running our first club group event on Sunday the 4th of July. And here we are. Here's the details. Now, it's very important, this is not our normal radio rally. There are no commercial traders, there are no refreshments inside, there are no tables or anything inside. We pray for good weather. We'll be getting an update nearer the time from our own Jim G through YLA. But it is an all-outdoor event. So the key things you need to know is you need to bring your own deck chair and refreshments. If you want to sell something, you can, but it needs to be literally from the back of your car or one table. No traders, please, because this is predominantly a social event. It's to get people meeting and safely distanced again. There are toilets inside the village hall, and that's the only thing in the village hall. You will be able to go there. Please bring a mask, by the way. I should have added that to that. If you think you want to go in the toilets, but I guess most of you are going to have masks with you anyway in the car. Bring your own sunshade or gazebo if you want to, and really pleased to tell you that it's free. The club is sponsoring this. And there will be some buckets around for voluntary donations to East Anglian's Children's Hospice and the Barford Village Roof Fund, because they've got a serious problem. They've got to raise some money. So we're going to split it with them because they've given us the field for a very reasonable price. I won't bother reading all the other details on there. I'm sure you can read them yourself. It's on our website now. It's at the top, in fact, of the homepage of our website. Please spread the word. We deliberately didn't put this in Radcom. Because it is a local event for East Anglia. Although, having said that, of course, we won't stop anybody coming. We just don't want someone coming with a massive van and think they can just set up the trading as normal, because that's not what it's about. Hope that makes sense. And we really hope lots of you will support it. And don't forget to let me know if you want those cameras. We'll make sure we do put them aside for you, because we might actually, looking at this, we might well get quite a few people ordering one. So don't forget, let me know on an email how many you want and where you want to pick it up from. Now, we've got had an interesting email from Donald M0KRK, and he says, the following message has just been sent to the people who are involved in the Valentia Island Cable Station World Heritage Project. At long last, he says, I've set up my mirror galvanometer and double Morse key and have taken HD movies of the responses that would appear on the galvanometer as a result of Morse characters keyed into the opposite end of a cable. My hope is that this could be taken up by some graphic software wizard, and we'll create a nice demo that would allow anybody interested to type in a message on a keyboard with a clever stitching and then be able to see what they actually saw. But of course, this could well be the way that they saw these sort of first early Morse things. So let's have a look at some examples. For those of you at home who can do Morse, see if you can guess what we're spelling out here.
It says it though.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just short videos. That was the first
one.
one.
Well, obviously I recognise that as an N.
Yep. What about this one?
A.
And the next one?
R.
What could the last letter be?
Oh, I don't know. What do you reckon?
C.
C.
Now, Donald, well done. You've done all of the characters of the alphabet. but we didn't really think we better put them all on. But that spelt out NARC, of course. If you have some software skills like that and it's something that you think you can do for a project, especially if you can, I guess, put them online in some way, you may well be into programming, that sort of thing, to be able to program HTML or something similar. Either download a direct message or send it via us and we'll get the message to him if you think you can help put that online. But it'd be a great way of remembering exactly how those first contacts were made. One other thing to let you know, and if you had your Radcom today, it's arriving any minute now for most people if you're a member of the RSGB. Unfortunately, the National Hamfest, which we all kind of hoped would take place this year, they have just cancelled it. So we won't have a National Hamfest this year, I'm afraid. It's been cancelled, but of course they are hopeful to run it in 2022. It takes a lot of organising though, so they have to cancel it relatively early. That means as well, of course, that the club won't be arranging a coach or anything to it this year. Please let us know what you've been up to as well. When I used to work in media, we used to call this time of year silly season, and it's really because there aren't many really great stories and things. And I know that you're all getting out more and everything, but just if you can just send us a picture or a photo or a video or anything like that of anything you've been doing to keep everybody in touch, we'd really appreciate it. You can drop them to this address, radio@dcpmicro.com, for any of your news and anything else you'd like to share for the show. Now, little people.
Yep, little people.
Tammy, over to you.
Here we go. Here's the little people for today. The gas station.
Gas station. And I can see our guest in the corner of a screen here smiling because he probably realises that we don't call them generally gas stations over here. We call them petrol stations.
Yep.
But there we go, gas station. Look at that. Isn't that just brilliant though? So they've used a sewing machine and done that. And as always, you can see these and lots more pictures. What's happening to that car on the bottom left? They're pushing it. Oh, they're pushing it. Right, brilliant.
Station.
These and lots more images you can find on miniature-calendar.com. Okay, let's go move on straight away to that shack. We have been sent some more shacks, so the competition's carrying on a little bit more. If you have got a shack that you've already submitted a normal picture of your shack and you've got another funny one to send, that's fine. We're going to put them all at the end though, because otherwise we kind of carry on forever. But if you haven't already submitted any kind of shack, that can be mobile as you saw or real, fine. If it's a funny one or something special about it, or maybe when you're somewhere else or something like that, you can still send it and we'll put that on a special at the end. Anyway, let's now have a look at last week's shack, and we asked who works from a shack like this. We've had some guesses. Mike G8EY says, is that the hand of K M7NTY? Now I am mega impressed, Mike, if you can tell whose that was from just a finger and the thumb.
Do you think the clue helped though, maybe?
Oh, well, there was a clue. Yes, should I mention the clue that I gave?
Can you remember what it was?
No, but I've written it down on the script. The clue I gave was, I'm sure they will come straight after J.
Oh, okay.
As in J-Y. Anyway, so that's Mike's.
Scott M0BLH, I'm guessing it's G0WHX's shack. I don't know what the name is of that.
And Colin M0GMK says, as K follows J alphabetically, and we have a K M7NTY on the membership list, that is my guess. Now that is
some good
detective work, because the shack belongs to...
It is
K
M7NTY.
And excellent. I have to be honest, I didn't think that we would get any guesses for that, but it's brilliant. Well done to those of you who got the detective work to guess whose that was. Thank you very much indeed. Let's have a look now at our shack for next week. Who do you think worked from a shack like this? Now, it's very important. This was a very recent shack set up for field day. Just 2 weekends ago. It's a NARC member. But who? That's your detective work. You could find that out if you want to. Okay, we haven't had their normal home shack before, but we do want, as part of this, we want the exact call sign they used for their NFD station. So as well as a name, we definitely want the proper full call sign that they used for the NFD station. Drop the details, drop your guesses rather, to this address by next Wednesday at 3 o'clock, radio@dcpmicro.com. And we'll reveal next week, this time, whose shack that was. Now we've running through time here for our next guest. Just to let you know what's happening at the club next week. On Sunday, it's GB2RS News at 7 o'clock on GB3MB. On Monday, the 21st of June, we've got the Monday Night Net at 7:30 on GB3MB, hosted by Stevie, G3EVA. And he says this week they're just going to have a good old-fashioned mardle.
Good old mardle?
Good old mardle, all right? To 8:30 on 80-metre CW Net. And next Wednesday, here, the 21st of June, this is your chance to get involved because we're going to have an interactive night and we're doing this. It's called the People's Quiz, or the Interactive Quiz, as you see there. And it's all about your questions. We need your questions for this quiz. You can send one or lots to us. You can either send them to us by email, please by the absolute latest Wednesday at 3 o'clock, earlier if you can, or you can join us live on Zoom to read out yours and then of course read the answer later. The great thing with this quiz is you're definitely going to get at least one question right because you'll know the answer because you set the quiz.
Yep.
It's normally when we used to meet, and we will meet one day by the way again, but anyway, when we used to meet, we used to have one of these and do it at the sixth form at CNS school, and they were great fun. We have done one of these online before, so we hope that you'll take part in this. Just think of a question, normally radio or technology related, not just something completely random like how many cornflakes are in my box or something, but something that people can ideally get. Radio, scientific, that
Wasn't
sort of thing.
one of the questions last time, what was the most popular toilet roll colour in France or something?
Oh, yes. There you go. So it could be something funny like that as well, as long as someone's got a vague chance of doing it. The funniest one I think I remember was Paul, who made us show a picture of an aerial. No, he didn't show us a picture. He asked the question, how many birds are on my aerial? I thought, wow. And then he showed a picture of his aerial. So there we are. Please, it's your opportunity to get involved. This is an interactive week, so we do need you there. We use Zoom now, and we'll send you the Zoom link details, of course, in the newsletter, and you'll be able to join from just after 7 when Sonny or Kevin will just also help you check your connection and everything. So we hope to see lots of you next week on NARC Live. Finally, just to remind you as well that we're very happy to send this card to anybody you feel could be cheered up for celebrate something. Or not feeling very well. This is a NARC card which we'll send to anybody if you just drop us an email with their name and address and the reason why, and we'll add your name to ours and send the card straight away. And don't forget to send your pictures, radio@dcpmicro.com. Keep in touch. Or questions or anything at all. Yeah, this is, remember, in the media world, this is silly season they call it, because there's not a lot of news happening in many ways.
So send us something silly.
Exactly. All right. Now then, let's go on to our main event. Our guest tonight, we've of course had here before, but no matter what radio or even antenna you've got, they all depend on those radio waves getting between your antenna and somebody else's. How do they get there? Propagation. And the guest we've got tonight is going to tell us all about where we are coming towards that cycle 25 that we've all been hoping for. And it was interesting that on our guest's QRZ page, he says, I've always been fascinated with how an electromagnetic wave can go to extreme distances, and this led to my interest in propagation. I doubt that the magic of radio will ever leave me, and I eagerly look forward to listening to faraway signals of the bands. So let's see where he thinks our Cycle 25 is away from us. And live from Fort Wayne in Indiana, it's Carl K9LA. Carl, good to see you. Can't hear you.
Are you muted, Carl?
Yep, I had to unmute. But thank you, David, and thank you, Tammy.
Good to see you again. Brilliant to see you.
Good to see you guys. Let me share the screen here.
Okay.
And this will be my 5th year with your club.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that when we met a little while ago. It's amazing, isn't it? I think you did this time last year, and we were doing something online then, of course.
Yep.
As well, but then the other time pardon?
There's been a lot of sunspots under the bridge, right?
Yeah, a lot of sunspots under the bridge. But you're here tonight to mainly tell us about where you think we are on this journey to Cycle 25. So I'll leave it to you.
Okay. Can you see the full screen?
We can. And by the way, if you've got questions or anything at home, Carl is on a bit of a time limit tonight, so please ask them either during the talk or straight afterwards. Any questions or comments. But over to you, Carl.
Yeah. Okay, let's do the questions after I get done. I think that'll be good. And what I'm going to talk about is the transition from cycle 24 to cycle 25. And also mostly I'll talk about cycle 25 and how we're doing and what we think we can expect. And then talk a little bit about the digital mode advantage. The digital modes have helped us get through this solar minimum, especially on the higher HF bands, 15, 12, 10, and 6 even. And also talk a little bit about predicting sporadic-E, and that involves Jim Bacon's EPI, E sub S index. So we'll look at that a little bit too, because regardless of where we are in a solar cycle, sporadic-E occurs, and it's kind of been pretty good here the past month, and even in May too.
Okay, I could just tell you as well, by the way, that Jim G3YLA is watching this as well.
I guess I can't say anything disparaging about him now.
Well, no, I'm sure you won't be doing that. You'll probably be talking about PropQuest and things like that. But anyway, I'll leave you to your talk, and please remember to ask questions or make comments during the talk, because we're going straight to Carl for questions.
Okay, great. So let's look at the transition from cycle 24 to 25. This is what I presented last year. And as you can see, the latest data was in the first several months of 2020. We kind of saw cycle 24 sunspots in red there, kind of decrease. We started to see cycle 25 sunspots. Well, we didn't see too many yet. The green is the smooth sunspot number, which is just further averaging the monthly means. And like I said, we were just starting to see cycle 25 sunspots. Those are the blue vertical columns. The smooth sunspot number in green was still decreasing, and that kind of tells us we hadn't reached solar minimum yet. So let's see what the latest data is. Well, there's been quite a change in the year. There are a lot more vertical columns in blue, which means we've had a lot of cycle 25 sunspots. The first official cycle 25 sunspot was in July 2019. It's indicated there on the chart right here in blue. The last cycle 24 sunspot was in July 2020, which is right here. That you could probably see that little red hump there. But that was the last cycle 24 sunspot. So what that tells us is solar cycles overlap. We see sunspots from both the old cycle and the new cycle at the same time, and we can tell the difference by where the sunspot region emerges on the solar disk in terms of latitude, and also by the polarity of the magnetic field that comes out of the sun and goes back in at a sunspot region. It was declared that solar minimum occurred in December 19th. That's when the smooth sunspot number minimized. And that's pretty easy to see here in the chart, the really thick green line. I've seen some people say that that's when cycle 24 started or ended, and that's when cycle 25 started. And it's kind of not true, because you got to remember we had that first cycle 25 sunspot 6 months earlier than solar minimum, and the last cycle 24 sunspot about 6 months after solar minimum. So we need to really, I think, better understand when solar cycles start and when they end. And it may not be reflected truly in the solar minimum when the smooth sunspot number minimized. So this is what we looked at last year. How long has our solar minimum been? On the left are purple, gold, light blue, black, and dark blue. Those were solar mins between cycles 18 and 19 through cycles 22 and 23. And you can see they were pretty short. The definition of solar minimum is when the smooth sunspot number was below 20. And you can see it only took 2 years for the solar cycles to descend below 20 and then ascend up through 20 on the way up again. And we got used to that. That's most of our lifetimes, cycles 18 through 2023. But then along came the green thick line. That was the minimum between cycles 23 and 24. That was the last solar min, and it went out almost 5 years. That was kind of a surprise, and we spent a lot of time at solar minimum. And back between cycles 23 and 24, we didn't have the digital modes yet, so the higher bands were kind of quiet. Well, unless you call noise, then it was very active with noise. As you can see, a year ago, the solar min we're in right now was kind of tracking the solar min between cycles 23 and 24. And of course, the question was, when will cycle 25 start rising? Well, it's good to say that cycle 25 is rising. Here's the updated data for that. You can see it's going to be, this solar min is going to be a little bit longer than the minimum between cycles 23 and 24. And if you extrapolate that big thick red line up to the vertical axis 20 value, yeah, it looks like it's going to be about 64 months, which, it's 5 years and 4 months. That's quite long. It's not the longest solar minimum in history. There have been longer, but it's surely the longest in our lifetimes. Just as cycle 24, the last cycle, was the smallest in our lifetimes, but not the smallest in recorded history. There we go. So what does a long solar minimum mean? Well, here's a plot of how long you're at solar minimum versus how big the next cycle is. This is from the data from the 24 cycles we've been through so far. And as you can see, what's quite obvious, the longer you spend at solar minimum, the smaller this next solar cycle is going to be. Now, if we take that 64 months from the previous slide, that translates to a maximum smooth sunspot number of around 80. Of course, there's some error bars associated with that red trend line, but it's going to be a small solar cycle. That's what this data tells us. And it's going to be similar to cycle 24. Okay, so let's talk about cycle 25 now. We can get into it. Last June, I was aware of 20 predictions. Well, that has blossomed to at least 56 now. I'm aware of the 56. There's probably some more out there, but I don't think there's too much good in looking at other predictions anymore. Of those 56 cycle 25 predictions, there's the distribution. For example, there's one prediction for a maximum smooth sunspot number between 25 and 49. That's a pretty darn small solar cycle. Hopefully that won't occur. Most of those 56 predictions fall into the maximum smooth sunspot number between 100 and 124, which there are 15 of those. There's what an average cycle is, 179. There are 3 predictions for an average cycle. Then there are 3 predictions here for a big solar cycle. Now here's a small cycle prediction. It comes from the Solar Cycle 25 Prediction Panel, which is part of NOAA and also NASA. It's in terms of the 10.7 centimeter solar flux. On the left is Solar Cycle 24 in terms of the solar flux. The black data is the monthly mean. It's quite spiky. If I had plotted the daily solar flux, it'd be even more spiky and it'd be really hard to tell what the solar cycle was doing. Now, even though the monthly mean is plotted, it's still a little tough to see what's going on. So that's why we further average the monthly means into the smooth sunspot number. That's the purple curve. And that's the smooth sunspot number for the solar flux for cycle 24. You can see it's very definitely, there were 2 peaks. The second peak was, even though it was small, was pretty good. We even had some 6 meter F2 propagation around the solar maximum, the second solar maximum of 24. So that gives us some hope for cycle 25 if it's small. On the right in red, that's the prediction, their prediction for cycle 25. You can see it's kind of similar to cycle 24. They did not predict if there's going to be two peaks. We just don't fully understand that yet. So it would just be a wild guess. But what I've indicated in the green horizontal arrowed lines is when we can expect the higher HF bands to come back. For example, 15 meters will come back on a daily basis when the smooth solar flux is around 90 or so. We've got a way to go before that happens. And it looks like about mid-2022 is when we'll start seeing 15 meters really come back on a daily basis, not just every a day or two or three during the whole month. As we move up to 10 meters, we need even more solar flux. And it's about 105. When the solar flux is 105 or greater for a long period, then we'll start seeing 10 meters come back on a daily basis. And I've indicated where 6 meter F2 will happen for cycle 25, if it's going to occur at all. And again, it's going to be in the fall and winter months around solar maximum. So that's a pretty bleak picture. We still got a way to go before the higher HF bands really come back in earnest. But we have to watch for big spikes in the solar flux, in the sunspot number, and in the extreme ultraviolet. So SFI is the solar flux index, 10.7 centimeter solar flux index. SN is the sunspot number. 304A is the extreme ultraviolet radiation at 304 angstroms, and that's equivalent to 30.4 nanometers. And extreme ultraviolet is the true ionizing radiation of the F2 region. Solar flux and sunspots are just proxies for EUV, but solar flux and sunspots have been easy to measure, especially in years past. So we've kind of grown accustomed to SFI and SN, but indeed what really gets the F2 region going is the extreme ultraviolet radiation. And you can watch these parameters on the N0NBH banner at QRZ.com and elsewhere. You can also look at spaceweather.com, Space Weather Prediction Center, solarham.net, WX6 SWW, Tamitha Scove, for her videos on a regular basis. Lots of places to get space weather. You can see what happened in 2020 and up to date here in 2021. You can see we were pretty much at solar minimum in most of 2020. The solar flux is the orange curve. And you can see it was around a little bit below 70, from 65 to 70 or so. And that's about what a solar minimum is. But in late 2020, the solar flux took a big peak. The extreme ultraviolet took a big peak. And what happened was we had great 15 and 10 meter worldwide propagation for CQ Worldwide DX phone and CW in October and November, and also ARRL 10 meter contest. But after the year ended, things kind of settled down back to solar minimum conditions in early 2021. But what you can see, and I've indicated with a red arrow, that there is an upward trend in both the solar flux and the EUV. And what we're just seeing is the rise of cycle 25 happening. And hopefully it's going to continue going up. Now, not only is this one way to take advantage of the higher bands, higher HF bands, when we see big spikes in solar radiation, we can also watch for a moderate spike in the K index. The K index is a 3-hour index indicating how active the Earth's magnetic field is. In general, the higher the K index, the more disturbed the F2 region of the ionosphere is. But if there's just a moderate spike in the K index, it can enhance the F2 region propagation at low and mid latitudes. And that could be applicable to paths in Europe too. And a great example of this was the 2018 California QSO party. There's a plot of the maximum usable frequency over the Boulder, Colorado ionoson. Boulder is about midway between W6 and the Midwest. And you can see on the first 6 days and on Saturday of the California QSO party, the MUF was only about 20 megahertz, which says I didn't hear any sixes on 10 meters here in the Midwest. But look what happened beginning around midday Sunday UTC. There was a moderate spike in the K index, and you can see what happened on Sunday with the MUF. It went to just above 30 megahertz, 10 meters was open, worked a lot of W6s here in the Midwest. So just be advised that, kind of monitor the K index. If you see a moderate spike, then flip your band switch up to 10 meters and see what's going on. Again, I can only stress that even though this is a North America type thing, it should be happening also in Europe too. Okay, we looked at that small cycle prediction from the Cycle 25, Solar Cycle 25 prediction panel. Here's one of those 3 big cycle predictions. It's from McIntosh and his colleagues, Dr. Scott McIntosh. And what he did is looked at the termination dates of solar cycles. In other words, the end of the inferred magnetic cycle. So he's looking what's going on inside the sun, and I think that's where we need to look. And what he did is correlated the difference in the termination dates of solar cycles to the next maximum. On the right is a plot of that correlation. How many years between termination dates versus how big the next cycle was. And you can see the longer, the more time between termination dates, the smaller the cycle. That's kind of equivalent to the longer the solar minimum period that we saw earlier, the smaller the cycle. Now, in his paper in 2020, he estimated that the termination date for cycle 24 was April 2020. And that's what gave the prediction of 229 for a maximum smooth sunspot number, which would be kind of equivalent to cycles 22 and 21 and 22. There in purple is that initial prediction. The April 2020 date said that there was about 9.3 years between April 2020 and the termination date for cycle 23, which was 2011, January 2011. And if you put 9.3 there and go up to the dashed red trend line, you'll see there's the prediction for 229. But the termination date for cycle 24 hasn't occurred yet. It's now 14 months later than their initial prediction, and it's still counting. When's it going to occur? Don't know, but it hasn't occurred yet. If it occurs this month, June 2021, if we enter that on the horizontal axis and go up, it says the maximum smooth sunspot number is going to be about 190, which that's a bit bigger than that average cycle, which is 179. Now, all we can do is wait and see what happens. But as the termination date for cycle 24 extends farther out, it's going to predict a smaller cycle. Like I say, all we can do is wait and see what happens. I don't know what else to say. Okay, so let's take a look at cycle 25, a little bit more in cycle 25. Historical data shows that big cycles rise faster than small cycles. And here's a plot of that. All 24 solar cycles, how long they took to rise to maximum, from minimum to maximum, and how big that next cycle was. You can see that the faster a cycle rises, the bigger it is. The longer it takes to rise, the smaller the cycle is. So how fast is cycle 25 rising? Well, here's a plot of that. In blue is the rise of cycle 19, the largest in recorded history, of course, the largest in our lifetimes. In red is the rise of cycle 24, which, like I mentioned earlier, it's the smallest cycle in our lifetimes, but not the smallest in recorded history. There are 3 others that are smaller. And in green is what cycle 25 has done so far. We have 11 months of data, and it says it's rising a bit faster than 24. So that's, we can say yay, and that's good, I guess. But it's still, I think, too early to tell what cycle 25 is going to do. It could start going and rise quickly, or it may kind of track cycle 24. I think maybe in another 6 months, 6 to 12 months of data, we may have a clearer picture of where cycle 25 is going. So again, here's another, well, we got to wait and see what happens. Okay, digital modes. I think this solar minimum is going to have the most activity in history on the higher bands, 15, 12, 10, and even 6, because of the digital modes, because of their ability to hear farther down into the noise. And here's a chart from the WSJT-X documentation, comparing all the modes, even sideband and CW. They've all been normalized to a 2500 hertz bandwidth, because that's what WSJT digital modes are indicated in, and that's their signal to noise limit. For example, you need about a 10 dB signal to noise ratio for sideband. For CW, you only need about minus 15 dB signal to noise. Again, that's in 2500 hertz. And you can see that there's a variety of digital modes. The more sensitive it is, which is at the bottom of the chart, the longer it takes to make a QSO. You can see where FT8 is. It has about a 6 dB advantage over CW. That's great. There are some other ones. For example, the Q65, which is for it can be used for tropospheric scatter. It has really good sensitivity. MSK144 is for meteor scatter. I'm not too familiar with the other ones. It seems like, of course, FT8 is the biggest. What everybody uses. FT4 is more of a contest mode, so it's quicker, so it doesn't have as good a signal to noise limit, but it's still a little bit better than CW. So pick your digital mode, get on and have some fun. Predicting Sporadic-E. Well, what we've mostly used in the past is the data on the left. It just shows the probabilities of Sporadic-E throughout a year and by local time. And what that chart tells us is the summer months are best. I think we all knew that. Late morning, early evening are the times that, in local times, that's when Sporadic-E is going to occur. And around December in the early evening. That's pretty coarse. It doesn't tell you which days are good. It just says, look for it in the summer months, look in the late morning and the early evening. So Jim, retired BBC meteorologist, G3LA, has come up with predictions based on terrestrial tropospheric weather and probably a lot more. He calls it the ES Prediction Index, EPI, and it's at that URL. I told David I will send a PDF of these slides, so you don't have to copy that URL down. You can look on the PDF later. Joe, K9LA, is also looking at the tie between Sporadic-E and tropospheric weather. And he has a nice article in CQ magazine. You can get it right there. And here's a comparison. of EPI, which comes from Jim, versus dxmaps.com. On the left is EPI for June 2nd at 1000 UTC. On the right is dxmaps.com, June 2nd, 0955 to 1005 UTC. That's on 6 meters, and you can see that in general, the predicted areas of good sporadic-E on Jim's chart, which are the purple and the dark gray, are kind of falling where the paths intersect on dxmaps.com. So this is a good tool to get you an idea of maybe I ought to get on, we'll start looking on 6 meters. Of course, you could always go to dxmaps.com or WhisperNet or the other ones to kind of verify that, you know, that people indeed are working each other on sporadic-E. So that's all I had. I kept this short for a reason because I have to go pick up 2 grandkids here in a little bit. Cycle 25 is beginning its ascent. That's great. That's good news. I think it kind of says that any talk about a Maunder minimum is kind of out the window right now. Of course, that says nothing about cycle 26 if cycle 25 turns out to be pretty small. So we'll have to wait and see. Most are forecasting a below average cycle 25. There are some for a big cycle. All I can say is get active on HF. And if you like the higher bands, use the digital modes because they'll offer more opportunities than CW and a heck of a lot more opportunities than sidebands. So get radioactive, have fun on HF. It's a lot of things to do, contests, chasing DX, chasing zones and all that stuff. So David, that's all I have. If there are any questions, hopefully I can answer them.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Carl. It's really good to get that update because we just can't wait, I suppose, for cycle 25. But of course, it's not just going to be a switch. It's not just suddenly going to be there and then disappear. So it's really good to see where we're on. If you've got a question for Carl now, as you can see, he studies this an awful lot, not just with his own data, but takes data from all sorts of people, including Jim, our own Jim, and lots of other places to try and get a more complete picture. So if you've got any questions or comments, we'd really like to hear them. Just to let you know, Carl, last week we had a talk about 6 meters. And of course, that's in a big ease, having a great ease boost at the moment. Excuse me. One of the things that I found fascinating, someone who hasn't really worked on 6, was the fact that the antennas, you know, whether they were horizontal or vertical, can really be twisted around, but depending on ease and depending on the height and where they're coming from. I mean, would you say the same thing applies to the HF? Where we are now, are there better antennas than others for use on the true HF bands?
Yeah, I think on the higher HF bands, I think the horizontal antenna is really the way to go. There are the 2 reasons for that. One is horizontal antenna doesn't depend on ground conditions that much. And also a horizontal antenna picks up less noise. So I think those are 2 big reasons. But there are times when vertical polarization is dominant. So it might be good to have a vertically polarized antenna also. You can always go full bore and do a circular polarized array, but then you still got to switch between left hand and right hand, depending on what's coming in at the time. So that reminds me of a paper a long time ago in communications something that CQ put out. It was by
not QST?
No, it wasn't QST.
Okay.
It was by a G, and he monitored bands. He monitored beacons on 10 meters using a circular polarized array, and found some really interesting stuff. I tell you what, I'll put that in this PDF.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Pretty fascinating, and it might apply to 6 meters too.
Yeah, I think certainly 6 meters does seem to be a fascinating band, but they all could light up in various ways, as you've shown. We do also, before you go, we do want to just show that you've got your own website, and there's quite a lot of information on there. So maybe we can come to you again now and just show your website.
I'll put that in. Yeah, I'll put that in.
Well, we'll pop this up here as well. It's quite a nice, easy one to remember. It's Carl's call sign, essentially, .us.
Yeah,
so there we are.
K9LA.us, yes.
Lots of really good information there. So we haven't got any questions, to be honest, from anybody yet. I guess this is just like an update, really, for the sort of thing that you've normally done for us. So any last tips then for anybody now? Obviously, I don't know if it's been the same in the US, but certainly over here, we've had a lot more people join the hobby. And unfortunately, of course, in the last year and a half, we haven't been able to meet. So clubs haven't been able to give the sort of support that we might normally do. But I know that a lot of newcomers watch this program. So is there any maybe advice for them on the sort of low-cost antenna? Maybe they're only running possibly 10 watts because that's all they're allowed to. What would you, in a summary, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but what would you suggest that they have a go with at this particular time?
Yeah, we are having an upsurge also. Unfortunately, they're mostly techs, and they need to upgrade and get more HF privileges, because I think they'll stay in ham radio longer if they get on HF, because there's so much more to do. Again, all we can say is, well, just wait a year or two when the higher bands really start going, and stations on the higher bands with modest antennas and low power are going to do really good. You should have no problem working worldwide with your 10 watts, even if it is kind of a small cycle. If it turns out to be a big cycle, well, then I think everybody's going to be pleased with what's going on. Again, modest antennas and modest power will do wonders. But we still have a way to go before we get there. Cycle 25 is just not high enough for 10 meters and 15 meters on a consistent basis yet.
Okay.
But just wait.
But wait, so the good news is for anybody who's just joined the hobby and they're maybe not getting quite as many contacts as they want, we're on the way up. We're definitely on the way up, aren't we?
Yes, and I'm sure newcomers to the hobby wonder what's so great about 15, 12, 10 meters and maybe even 6 meters. Just wait a couple of years and you'll understand why. I don't know, what are the privileges for your entry level on HF?
Just 10 watts is mainly the limitation. You can do, putting me on the spot now, and I can't remember. I don't think there's any particular limits. There's pretty much, you can work on anything, 2 meters 70, 6. I'm trying to think, there might be a band you can't work. I know you can't work on very, very high, sort of 23 centimeters, but I don't know if you can remember, Tammy. I don't think there's any particular restrictions except the power. That's what happens. Okay. And then then our next level up is called an intermediate, and then the power levels go up to 50 watts for most bands.
Okay.
And things, and the other restrictions are things like you can't make your own transmitter unless it's from a commercial kit and that sort of thing. So, but as many people will say, and I know it's nice to have that power there, but a lot of people, after all, make the hobby their own just by the challenge of working with such low power. So I think especially as we get more into the cycle, I'm sure we're going to get more people try QRP 10 watts as what most people define it to.
We also have to remember that, the higher bands, 15, 12, 10, and even 6, the antennas get smaller as you go up in frequency. So that should help also in putting up maybe a little bit better antennas than a little vertical or a dipole or something, or inverted V.
Absolutely. Only no questions for you, Carl, but just one very quickly. I can just tell you that we had Jim G through ILA is watching, and he just says this message to you: great talk, Carl, and look forward to hearing more about 25 as it goes on.
Yeah, I hope we'll have some really good news. Although cycle 24 was kind of small, but 10 meters was good for several years. We had a good time, and it's going to happen again. So.
And that's a great way to leave it. Carl, thank you ever so much for coming to us again to give us an update on propagation on cycle 25. I'm sure you'll be back in the future, hopefully. So thanks once again to you for your insight into everybody's feelings about where we are on cycle 25. Carl K9LA. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, David.
There we are. That's great. That's Carl K9LA bringing us an update on propagation, on where we are on that all-important cycle 25. If you have only recently just got in the hobby and you're not quite sure what we're talking about, you learn more about propagation in the intermediate and and then in the advanced. But it's really very, very important. It can be more important, in fact, than the equipment that you've got and the aerials and everything. So, and we are basically on as you saw, we're just getting into that cycle 25, where we should be able to see some great radio in the next few years. So, anyway, that's about it. Thanks again to Carl, K9LA. Just remind you again what's happening next week on the club. GB2RS News is on Sunday at 7 p.m. on the repeater. GB3MB on Monday the 21st of June, also on GB3MB, a good old model. Is that good enough for
model?
Oh, yeah, for 7:30 on Monday night, and at 8:30 there's an 80 meter CW net. And next Wednesday here, 21st of June, it's the People's Quiz, and I can't stress enough how we need your questions. How good that quiz is and everything depends on you. You can either be able to email them to us, or you can join us live and give your questions on Zoom, and we'll be sending details. There's the email address on your screen now to send both your questions for next week's quiz and anything else for the show. We would love to hear from you. But I think that's pretty much it, isn't it, Tammy?
Yeah, I
Been
think
a good,
so.
interesting night, an update, and we've had a lot on propagation this year. It's all positive. That's the great news. Don't forget as well these little cameras that I showed you. If you can email us with how many you would like, they're £5 each or 3 for £10. Saw a few questions. I don't think it works on infrared, by the way. Someone who asked that, will it work completely in the dark? What I'll do, I might risk one and take it apart and just see if it's one that got one of those filters in front of the actual CCD, because if it has, we could take that off and then we would see in the dark. You just need to provide some infrared source for it. But anyway, they're really nice little cameras. You want to take one apart, don't you? I do. You know what I'm like. Do me too well. But they're a great little camera. I've got quite a lot of them. Got 80. So
the people that actually put on the message earlier have sorted that. So
you've written those down.
I've written all those down, so that's no problem.
Everybody tell us where they're going to pick them up?
Not everybody told us where they're going to pick them up.
Well, do tell us where you're going to pick them up. I would prefer an email if you can. Just drop us a quick email. You know that address, radio@dcpmicro.com. How many you'd like, where you'd like to pick them up from. Or we can post them to you and you can just pay the club for the money, and we'll arrange to post them to you. But hopefully we'll see a lot of you at that Barford Social on the 4th of July. But that is it. Thank you for joining us for this NARC Live. We'll look forward to you next week when we've got the People's Quiz. But for now, from Tammy M0TC.
Goodbye.
And me, David G7RP. Good to see you. Take care. Bye-bye.